powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. Now, live from inside the Matt Black Kia Studios, it's Football at 4.
All right, Football at 4, powered by the Inside the Birds podcast and brought to you by PropSwap, America's sports betting marketplace. Sell your sports bets and take your profit. Perfect time to use PropSwap during the Masters tournament, which is underway. I think Justin Rose is still 7 under par, 2 shots up on Jordan Spieth. Right now, it's time for Football at 4. Now, Adam Kaplan was here Monday, so Geoff Mosher is hitting for him today, and he, like all guests, appears via the Boardwalk Honda hotline. Moshe doing it via telephone today. What's going on, Moshe?
How are you doing, Michael? What's going on?
Everything is good. It's I see this avatar of you just smiling at me. It's a little different than seeing your face.
Well, at least I'm smiling.
Yeah, Josh picked a picture of you actually smiling here. All right, for those of you out there, Football at 4, I want to get your take on some things on the field before we look at some draft stuff, and that's the signings from earlier in the week, which brings in Eric Wilson, number 1, to the linebacker position. You and I both know linebacker's a spot that you and I talk about a lot. We don't see how they're going to upgrade it, but they brought in a significant upgrade on Wednesday.
Well, yes, it's a significant upgrade when you consider the fact that if they didn't have Eric Wilson, who would they be playing next to Alex Singleton in not only their nickel formations, but in their base formations as well? And, we have guys like T.J. Edwards, who's kind of a one-dimensional linebacker, downhill style. And then there's Davion Taylor, who's never even really gotten his feet wet as a rookie last year and has a lot of work to do. So, yes, it's an upgrade because it's a guy who, again, played in that Minnesota defense. So much like Anthony Harris, he brings not only a certain skill set, but also because he's a starting linebacker in the NFL. So the bar is pretty as far as an upgrade, but it is a good signing for them.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, obviously, when you're dealing with the Eagles' linebacking core, which has been a real weakness, but, Eric Wilson's a guy who played 96% of the snaps. I mean, he's a guy who was productive. Tackles 122, 3 sacks, 3 interceptions. It's highly more productive than any other guy that Philadelphia, but you just brought it up. So is he productive because he's a good player? Is he productive because he was a good player on a bad team? Or is he productive because he got the opportunity and we don't know enough about him? Because he really only got a chance to play because Anthony Barr got hurt.
Right, exactly. And it's kind of like an Anthony Harris signing, right? Anthony Harris was basically a special teamer and a backup while the Vikings relied heavily on Harrison Smith and Andrew Sandejo for quite a while when they were a pretty good defense. And then guys got hurt, guys moved on. Anthony Harris got some opportunities the last 2 years. 2 years ago, he happened to be at the right place at the right time a lot, had a lot of interceptions. Last year, he had a lot of tackles because they weren't a great defense. And he was safety. You never want to have your safety, among the top tacklers on your team unless he's a box safety, which Anthony Harris wasn't. So same thing with Eric Wilson. I mean, obviously Anthony Barr and Eric Kendricks are the 2 really talented linebackers on the Vikings. And this guy had an opportunity to play because of injuries. He did make the most. He does know the scheme. He's not the greatest tackler in the world, but I sense that his role will be mostly in the nickel and dime packages here when they're in 3. And it's really even hard to talk about what they're going to look like in 3 linebacker formations or 2 or 1 right now because the draft is a couple of weeks away, and I still think that that's an area that the Eagles are going to try to hit hard, from round 2 to round 7 at some point. Yeah. And so anybody that they draft will be given a pretty good opportunity to also get the time in there.
Now, Jeff, Sal Powell was on with us earlier, and we talked. He really mentioned that they're going to be a big cover 2 team, rely on the corners. You've said on Inside the Birds, you guys think corner. If you're playing cover 2, predominantly, those corners are pretty important in this defense. And if you're not going in with better corners than what you have now, so obviously, we've talked a lot about that cornerback position, but I guess so many different things could happen. But at number 12 right now, would you say that is the most likely position? Forget best player available and yada yada. That the corner is the one that they are most zoned in on.
I think if those two guys that we talk about a lot, J.C. Horn and Patrick Surtain, are there, yes, I do.
Now let me stop you real quick let me stop you real quick and ask you this: do you think Jonathan Gannon and Nick Sirianni will have some say in that? Hey, I'm playing cover 2. I need to rely on my corners. I need you to get me some corners early in this draft. Do you think they will have that ability?
I think what they have, Mike, is not necessarily say in the pick, but a say in obviously the scheme that they're going to run and how important certain positions are to what they want to do. And if you're Howie Roseman, you want to listen in because your chances of succeeding on your pick and hitting on your pick and being a good GM is picking the right player to fit the scheme, right? Like the first 2 years of Chip Kelly's tenure, Chip Kelly did not have a say in the draft. Howie Roseman was making the picks, but certainly when you pick a guy like Marcus Smith, a pass-rushing outside linebacker for a 3-4 scheme, which you would normally not pick, you're doing it because your coaches and your head coach and the scheme you run dictate that. So I do think everything just kind of folds in. They really need corners. They are going to play a lot more cover 2. They're going to play cover 3 as well. And it just so happens that where they're picking, there should be some really good cornerbacks available that will also happen to probably be the best players on the board. And so I think it's all going to fold into that. I can't imagine that Howie is going to make a pick without the input or the collaboration of everybody on the team, including the coaches. I don't know, though, that they get more weight or priority than anybody else. But, again, you're a good GM. You want to pick the right players for the scheme you're going to run.
Yeah. Well, how much say did Jim Schwartz get with his scheme? I mean, did he say, hey, get me some linebackers, and then he got nothing?
Well, Jim got a linebacker on day 3 last year that just happened to be a guy who wasn't ready to play, which they should have known, but he differently. But Jim, I mean, think about when Jim first took the job, right? And you see parallels already. When Jim took the job, they got a couple of players from Buffalo that were familiar with his scheme. They got Leotis McKelvin to play corner, and they got Nigel Bradham to play linebacker, and then they would have lined up the next year trading for Ronald Darby, who would have also come over from Buffalo. And you're kind of seeing that now. I mean, you're getting Anthony Harris from Minnesota and Eric Wilson from Minnesota. So clearly Howie's making a concerted effort, not just to get, like, upgrades, but guys who are going to help Jonathan Gannon implement this scheme and let everybody understand what's going on the field.
Geoff Mosher, Football at 4, powered by the Inside the Birds podcast, 20 days away from the NFL draft. We had a lot of good draft questions from our listeners yesterday for Andrew. That was fun. So if you guys have questions that you want to pass Jeff's way, we'll try to fit some in between now and the end of the segment. But before we get to that spot, they did bring in Jordan Howard, by the way, as well. And I know that they had him last year, but they kind of brought him in late in the season. Do you think this kind of negates adding a running back with one of those 11 picks? Because they only have Boston Scott and Miles Sanders, really, I think, on the roster.
Absolutely not. It shouldn't. Again, I'm not part of the front office, but it shouldn't. It's a one-year deal. It's very little money. It's the right type of move to make because you'd never want to be forced to draft at a certain position in any round of the draft. You want to be able to take the best player. So if you happen to make your picks and you don't get a running back, then you say, okay, we still have Jordan Howard to go along with Miles Sanders and Boston Scott. However, if there's a really good running back there, someday where, round 3, round 4, round 5, who fits what you do or is that thumper that you're looking for, you can still draft that guy. And if he has a really nice camp, nobody says that Jordan Howard has to make the 53-man. I don't know. I haven't seen the structure of the deal. I doubt there's a lot of guaranteed money in it. Signing this late and being on his, third team now, or fourth team in 4 years. So it gives you that flexibility to have somebody right now, which is what free agency is all about, filling your holes, but then not reaching at any position in the draft. But if you do draft that guy
right,
and he's better, you can play that guy. You don't have to worry about feelings here or money or financial investment.
If there's a corner at 12, Horn or Patrick Surtain, or there's a wide receiver, Waddle, Smith, where do you go?
I go corner. I go Patrick Surtain. Look, I think Jalen Waddle is going to be a very interesting player. I've heard from, on Inside the Birds we've talked about with Greg Cosell, the Tyreek Hill comparison. Definitely a player you want to put on the move a lot. I mean, he's certainly got a lot of explosion, but it's just – and ordinarily I would say, hey, whoever you have ranked higher, that's how I go BPA. If you have Waddle as ranked way higher numerically on your board than Surtain or Horn, then you probably should do that. But I have a feeling that this team is going to judge them all as they're all pretty darn good. And it's been too long, Mike. 21 years now since they took a cornerback in the first round in a league that's all about stopping the pass. Like, at some point, you have to invest some draft capital in cornerback and hit.
All right, let's. We got some questions on the stream coming in for Geoff. So if you have a question that you want Geoff to target, send it in on the stream or the text board, 609-403-0973. Here's one for you. It says, Geoff, love Inside the Birds. That's number one. I've noticed the last couple days with Andrew and now today, we've had a lot of cross listeners from Inside the Birds and the Football at 4 segment, so that's good. Today, Daniel Jeremiah said the Panthers may take offensive line at 8. Do you think that it's likely, and would that increase the chances the Eagles get a corner at 12?
Yeah, certainly. That's something we've talked about. The Panthers are kind of a wild card team now that they got their quarterback because they really need offensive line help, but they also need cornerback help. So you hope, if you're the Eagles, and you want either a corner, then that you would hope the Panthers took the offensive lineman, and that it pushes those two cornerbacks down a little bit, but you just never know.
All right, let's get another question for Geoff here. If the Eagles get a corner at 12 and Farley falls back to the back end of the first round, would it be good for the Eagles to move up and take him there or stay at 37 and get a guy like Asante Samuel? This is an interesting question to me, Geoff, because Farley, as we know, Adam has been on the show saying he might fall out of the first round. You know, the Eagles famously took a injured corner in the second round a couple of years ago, and that didn't work out so well for him. Totally different injury, but Farley has 2 back procedures. That kind of worries me a little bit, but would you take him if he's falling deep in the first round, or wait till 37 and see if he goes there, or just pass on him altogether?
I think I wouldn't pass on him altogether. I also wouldn't be scared, per se, by what they went through with Sidney Jones. You have to trust your talent evaluation. I'm not sure I would give up draft capital, move back in the first round for him unless I knew the full extent of his medicals and how the team felt about him. But I certainly would consider him at 37 overall and not fear the Sidney Jones syndrome all over again. I don't think you can do that. You know, great players, sometimes you miss on them. Eagles more than lately have done that. But if you really love a guy and you thought he was top 15 or top 10 and he's there at 37 and you're confident he can recover from the surgeries and be an effective player, then you take him.
You don't have any problem with going round 1 corner, round 2 corner, do you?
I'm laughing because we talked about that last time I was on, and somebody listened to it and thought that I don't know how they thought this, Mike, because we were talking about guys like Surtain and Horn, and I said I have no issue with the Eagles going corner first round, corner second round. I must have said cornerback first round, cornerback second round, and some guys called me a lunatic because I wanted a quarterback in the first round and a quarterback in the second round. So he clearly didn't hear the context of the conversation you and I were having. But yes, to repeat, I am very comfortable with the Eagles going corner back first round and cornerback second round, as long as those are the guys that they feel are the highest at the position in both rounds.
Yes. Well, as Brian in Ocean City wants to know, what is Geoff's cell service? Your phone is a little.
Is it bad?
It's a little. Normally, too, you're on video, so you sound a lot better on video than you do phone.
Apologies. I am on the New Jersey Turnpike coming back from a little family trip upstate New York.
All right. So then with that, I want to transition to a report. I guess you could call it a report, something from Mike Florio over at Pro Football Talk. So since you've been away, this came out today. Now, a lot has happened in this Deshaun Watson case today. There's a lot of new news in this Deshaun Watson case today. But that being said, according to Florio, there's one team to watch closely as a destination for Deshaun Watson, the Eagles. As one league source explains it, the Eagles are sufficiently determined to upgrade the team, and they would pursue Watson if the window opens for doing so. So would you think that Jeffrey Lurie, knowing his background, would he have any interest in greenlighting a trade for Deshaun Watson?
I will just repeat what we've said on Inside the Birds a couple of times. Going back 2 or 3 weeks ago, are the Eagles interested? Of course they're interested. They have uncertainty at the quarterback position right now. They're always looking for top-level quarterback. But a move like this, with what's going on right now with that guy, would not be approved or made by Jeffrey Lurie unless first his team of security people, and that might not just be Eagles employees, it might be police, it might be outside, outsourced help investigators, are completely and 100% satisfied that everything that's being said about Deshaun Watson right now is not true. And Jeffrey Lurie would have to be 100% confident that Deshaun Watson's character isn't what it's being alleged to be right now before any kind of move or any kind of thumbs up is going to be made. And Mike, that takes time. I mean, it's not just one. It's not sending Big Dom over down to Houston to talk to a few people. It's an expensive type of work that has to be done.
Geoff, just to give you some update on today, the news today is that the court in Texas ruled that the women have to attach their name to the lawsuit. They cannot be Jane Doe. So they now need to step forward. And the woman that came out on Tuesday, she said she's been getting death threats, which means what? Some of these women are probably going to say, well, she's getting death threats. I don't want to deal with that. And that's Watson's course of action at this point. So that's what's happened today, is that some people feel that if the women don't come out with their name, they might throw the cases out.
Yeah, well, as we've seen in the past, Mike, even when, like the Ezekiel Elliott situation, where he was never found guilty in any court, never accused, I believe, of doing anything wrong, and handed him a 6-game suspension. So when you're the Eagles or any team that's looking into this and trading a potential trade for Deshaun Watson, you can't just rely on what the courts are going to say. You have to also rely on what's going to happen with the NFL investigation, and then, of course, what your own feedback is. So interest, yes. I mean, at this point, though, I don't see anything happening anytime soon with all this stuff still hovering around.
All right, some more questions coming in. This one's from Frank. He says, what does Geoff think about Dallas coveting Kyle Pitts? How hard would Dallas be to stop with Pitts? Now, can they stop anybody is the question. But what about this Mortensen report that it says they're basically infatuated with Kyle Pitts?
Hey, I mean, there's only one football, right? They got a lot of weapons. They've got Cooper. They've got Zeke we just talked about. They got CeeDee Lamb. You add Pitts to that offense, sure, it's great. But does that help improve their defense, which hasn't been that good? No. So, I mean, I look at it and I say, all right, any team here is going to draft. When you're not drafting a quarterback, right, any team that's drafting one player can't just rely on that one player to, take them where they're looking to go. Quarterback is different, obviously. We've seen that. We all think that the Bengals probably have a better future with Joe Burrow than they've had in the last 5 or 6 years because that's the impact a quarterback has. But if Dallas takes Kyle Pitts, yeah, they're really tough to defend, but they're already tough to defend. So what do they go from, with Dak healthy, do they go from 26 points a game to 31? You're still going to have to score a lot of points to beat them nonetheless.
Absolutely. And, look, I thought last year they took Lamb. I thought they should have taken a defensive player. Lamb's a great talent. He still had about 900 yards. I mean, it wasn't like he blew the top off the place. Now, he had 5 different quarterbacks playing with them. He might be a superstar, but their defense was so bad last year. Can they get better? They fired Mike Nolan. We'll see. They brought Dan Quinn in there. It's going to be interesting. I think one of the more interesting storylines in round 1 anyway, Geoff, is the whole chess match between Dallas at 10, New York at 11, and Philadelphia at 12. You have 3 division rivals back to back to back. And I think that's going to be an obstacle for Philadelphia, at least if you mentioned, hey, they might want to trade back up. Well, they're not trading up with Dallas and New York. I think we know that.
Yeah, I also wonder if some of these reports of who Dallas is infatuated is, as you know, this time of the year, it's silly season. You're trying to throw teams off. Maybe it's intended to stop the Eagles from trading up above them with 9 with Denver because they think, it's okay. Dallas is going to take Pitts or whatever offensive weapon is there. We can sit here and get to 10, Yeah. All the reports of guys infatuated with X, Y, and Z, teams infatuated with X, Y, and Z, you have to take those with a grain of salt at this time.
Well, let me ask you this: the Deshaun Watson story. Is that the Eagles slipping that out there to see what the reaction is? Like, what the fans' reaction is? Like, yo, get this guy or steer clear of this guy. Do they kind of want to test
crowdsourcing?
What's that?
Crowdsourcing, huh?
Right. I mean, if you're the Eagles, do you say, look, Mike Florio, hey, we would be interested in Watson if it was available. He puts it out there, and they check the reaction. Because let me tell you, the reaction's not good.
That is true. I can imagine that it's not. But see, that's the thing. The reaction on a thing like this can change overnight, depending on what happens legally or just,
Oh, I know.
with people getting in and then getting out. So I don't know. People thought Baltimore was doing that a couple of years ago with a certain player, and I forget who comes to mind, where they said they were going to sign him, and then they were kind of trying to gauge crowd reaction. It's been done before, but I don't know that it benefits the Eagles really to do this.
All right.
At this point.
Well, obviously, that's a pretty controversial signing or trade if they were to make it. We'll see what happens with Watson, but that new news today certainly changes some things potentially for him. They could put him on the exempt list as well, which means he would be paid to not play. So a lot more can happen. Football at 4, of course, powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. The guys have a fresh podcast coming up for you on Monday morning at 6 a.m., and we are 20 days from the NFL draft. We have plenty of draft coverage. Geoff Mosher is back on Monday, and we'll have more Eagles, NFL, and draft news for you here on Football at 4. Jeff, enjoy the weekend, man.
Appreciate it. You too.
All right, Geoff Mosher, like all guests, appeared via the Boardwalk Honda hotline.